The rice farmer sighed. The war had ravaged the countryside for as long as he knew it. When would the war end? He coughed as the smoke laughed around the field. All his fellow farmers' houses were burnt. It seemed he would be next.
Before the Russian occupation of Tajikistan in the 1860s, the region was ruled by powerful empires and dynasties, including those of Alexander the Great, the Kushans, the Samanids, the Mongols, and the Bukharan Emirate, which introduced Islam to the area. The Russian Empire's arrival was driven largely by the desire for cotton, and after the 1917 revolution, Tajikistan was absorbed into the Soviet Union. Under Soviet rule, collectivization reshaped agriculture, and Stalin's purges led to the expulsion of over 10,000 members of the Tajik Communist Party. From 1926 to 1959, the Russian population in Tajikistan rose from 1% to 13% as part of a broader effort to integrate the republic into the Soviet system. After Stalin's death, Khrushchev's Virgin Lands campaign aimed to modernize the region, but economic struggles and political dissatisfaction persisted. By the 1980s, growing nationalist sentiment called for greater rights and improved conditions, but meaningful change would not begin until the political upheaval of the 1990s. The Tajik Civil War was primarily caused by perestroika, the reform policy initiated by Mikhail Gorbachev, which sparked a Muslim democratic movement in the Soviet Tajik Republic. This movement, coupled with the collapse of Soviet control, led to rising tensions between various factions. On May 5, 1992, conflict erupted as fighting broke out between the Old Guard supporters, those loyal to the Soviet past, and the revolutionaries pushing for democratic and Islamic reforms. The old Soviet republics supported the pro-government forces, while the rebels, led by the United Tajik Opposition, UTO, a coalition of democratic reformers and Islamists, fought for a new direction. Amidst this chaos, President Rahman Nabiev was captured and forced to resign, marking a critical point in the war. After years of intense and brutal fighting, the conflict finally ended when a UN-brokered armistice was signed on June 27, 1997, bringing an official end to the violence. However, by this time, Tajikistan had been utterly destroyed, with over 1 million people displaced and the nation's infrastructure in ruins. Despite the peace deal, the effects of the war lingered, leaving deep scars on the country. After the Civil War, Tajikistan experienced mostly peaceful elections, but the political landscape remained tightly controlled. President Emomali Rahman has ruled the country since 1994, leading an authoritarian regime where political opponents are often oppressed and dissent is suppressed. According to a leaked U.S. diplomatic cable, Rahman was reported to control much of the country's major businesses, consolidating both political and economic power. Access to foreign websites is frequently blocked, limiting free information and press. Despite these restrictions, Tajikistan is officially a secular state, which means that all religions are legally welcome, though religious expression is still monitored by the government. Tajikistan shares its borders with 4 countries: Afghanistan to the south, Uzbekistan to the west, Kyrgyzstan to the north, and China to the east. Geographically, it's an incredibly mountainous country. About 93% of Tajikistan is covered in mountains. That's almost the entire country. 2 of Central Asia's major rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sur Darya, flow through Tajikistan, bringing water and life to the valleys below. One of those valleys is the Fergana Valley, a very fertile and important agricultural region that's actually shared between Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. The mountain ranges are carved up by gorges and canyons, which gives the country dramatic, rugged scenery. Also, Tajikistan is landlocked, meaning it has no access to the ocean. Whoa, I didn't even know that before researching this. Administratively, the country is divided into 4 main regions: Sugd Province in the north, Kotlan Province in the southwest, the Gorno-Badakhshan Autonomous Region in the east, and the regions of Republican subordination, which includes areas under central government control. If you want to look it up on a map, the coordinates are 38.8610 degrees north, 71.2761 degrees east. Tajikistan's main religion, though not official, is Sunni Islam, followed by the vast majority of the population. The country covers an area of about 55,251 square miles and is home to around 10.8 million people. The official languages are Tajik and Russian, and the capital city is Dushanbe. Tajikistan uses the Somoni, abbreviated as TJS, as its national currency. It operates in the Tajikistan time zone, TJT, which is UTC +5. Tajikistan became a member of the United Nations in 1992, shortly after gaining independence. Its GDP is approximately $14.84 billion, with a GDP per capita of just over $1,400, indicating it's a relatively low-income country. On the corruption index, Tajikistan scores a 19, which is considered highly corrupt. The fertility rate is relatively high at 3.31 children per woman, and the air quality index sits at 128, meaning the air is generally unhealthy for sensitive groups. Tajik is actually a variety of Persian, and it exists on a continuum of mutual intelligibility across all Persian dialects. It's part of the Indo-European language family, more specifically the Indo-Iranian branch, under the Persian language group. This means it's most similar to Dari, which is the variety of Persian spoken in Afghanistan and also closely related to standard Iranian Persian or Farsi. Tajik isn't mutually intelligible with North Indian languages like Hindi or Bengali, but it is still related to them since they're all part of the Indo-Iranian branch. Zooming out even further, Tajik is distantly related to a ton of other Indo-European languages, like Greek, Spanish, Russian, Irish, and even English. And just like in biology, when we say languages are related, we mean they all descended from a common ancestor. In this case, something called Proto-Indo-European, the ancient root of many modern languages. Tajik follows a subject-verb word order, which means instead of saying I hate dogs, you'd say I dogs hate. This structure is actually the most common word order in the world and is also found in languages like Japanese, Hindi, Turkish, and Quechua. Tajik also uses postpositions instead of prepositions, so a phrase like in the forest would literally be said as the forest in. The stress in words typically falls on the last syllable, and compared to Farsi or Dari, Tajik has more loanwords from Turkic languages and Russian, and fewer from Arabic. Grammatically, Tajik leans more on auxiliary verbs and postpositions rather than inflections like case endings, verb conjugations, or plurals. There's no grammatical gender, and the language tends to simplify consonants and lessen distinctions between certain vowels. Uniquely, Tajik is written in the Cyrillic script, not the Perso-Arabic script that most Persian languages use. Tajik is written using the Cyrillic script, not the usual Perso-Arabic script used for most Persian languages, which reflects its unique history. It also has a lot of Russian loanwords, and while it was once seen as just a dialect of Persian, the Tajik people began to view themselves as distinct from other Persians, especially during their time in the Soviet Union. Because of this shift, Tajik began to develop independently, without having to match the rules of standard Persian, and over time, Tajik identity also diverged. Today, Russian is also an official language in Tajikistan. The country's power structure is still very centralized, just like it was under the USSR. Local governments report directly to the central authority. During Soviet control, Sunni Islam was heavily suppressed, and although it's still practiced today, it tends to be less strict than in many other Islamic countries. Speaking of Tajik, Duolingo offers courses in over 40 languages, but one is notably missing: Tajik. Spoken by over 8 million people and deeply rooted in Persian culture, Tajik is the national language of Tajikistan and a vital link in Central Asia's linguistic heritage. Adding Tajik to Duolingo would empower language learners, connect the global Tajik diaspora, and help preserve a beautiful and historically rich language for future generations. We ask Duolingo to recognize the importance of Tajik and make it accessible to learners around the world. So come on, like and share this video to spread this. Anyways, back to Tajikistan now. YouTube has actually been blocked and unblocked multiple times in Tajikistan, usually whenever anything on the platform is seen as offensive toward the president. But for now, it's unblocked again. Tajikistan is also the poorest of all the former Soviet countries and the poorest country in Central Asia. A lot of major foreign companies are blocked or simply don't operate there. For example, there's no McDonald's and, sadly, no Panera Bread either. The capital city, Dushanbe, has a fun origin. It's actually named after a day of the week. It means Monday in Tajik. On the bright side, Tajikistan is home to the second highest dam in the world, the Nurik Dam, which is a pretty massive engineering achievement. And there you have it on an overview of Tajikistan. Like and subscribe like what that lady is saying. Comment down Uzbekistan for the continuation of my overview series, and bye.